Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let me just start by saying that I am so excited to start doing this. People who know me know that I read a lot, and I mean a lot. So I started thinking to myself, why don't I start sharing these books with you guys, the books that I read? Share the plots, the reviews, the thoughts, the pros, the cons, discuss all of that. And then the way that this will work, like I said, I'll share the plot, the story, the characters, the ups, the downs, all the crazy and all its glory about the book. And then I will spill the tea about the book. Get it? Tea? Tea, hence the name. Yeah? Okay, enough of that. So, yeah, also I will include a spice meter because I know that some of you like to read some smutty books. So if I read such smutty book, I will share the spice review with you guys, and go from there, and give it an official thumbs up or thumbs down. And yeah, why am I still rambling? Let's get started. I am so excited. Without further ado, let's go. So when I first started preparing for this, I realized that this is probably the worst series to start with just because of how complicated the story is. But you know what? I'm a Taurus and I love a challenge, so I'm gonna do this regardless. Wish me luck. We are gonna start with Sarah J. Maas's Crescent City book 1. Are you excited? I'm so excited because this book was amazing. But yeah, so just a warning, this book alone is about 800 pages. So I'm gonna try to stick to the bare bones of the story, just so we can get through everything that is important, and that, you guys have to know about. But yeah, because if we don't do that, we're gonna sit here discussing this book for 2 weeks, and I don't have time to do that, and I have to feed my cat Ralphie. Okay, so yeah, let me just start by saying that I am a huge fan of Sarah J. Maas and all her books. I probably own all her books. So yeah, I'm really excited about sharing this book with you guys. But I'm gonna stop right here and say, spoiler alert. If you have not read the book, right, this is where you should stop. You should not go further, okay? If you're one of those people who likes to watch these videos before reading the books, don't watch further than this, okay? Because I will be discussing everything, the plot, the story, the characters, everything. I might even discuss other books, so be careful, okay? Now, if you're one of those other people who like to watch these kind of videos after reading the book, I'm gonna try my best to not spoil any other book she wrote. But because, guys, the rumors are true, she is trying to connect all of her books through one universe. So I'm gonna do my best not to spoil any other books for you guys. But yeah, I don't know why I'm babbling. I think it's because I'm so excited. But let's get started. I'm so excited to do this. So let's get started. So let's start with the characters before we jump into everything. This book has a lot of characters, and the second book introduces some more characters and even expands on pre-existing characters as well. But we're going to stick to the first book for now because this is complicated enough. Okay? Characters. First up, we have Bryce Quinlan. Miss Bryce Quinlan. She is the main character of the book, obviously. We start the story with Bryce being about 23 years old. Yeah. And on the surface, Bryce looks like a typical party girl. Okay, so she has a job at an antiquity store and works for a very powerful witch called Jezebel. And by night, she parties like a rock star, with her friends Danica, Fury, and Juniper. Okay, so we start the story and we quickly realize that they go to clubs every night and bars every night. They don't only just get hammered, but they also do every drug available to them, on the market, which is, not ideal. Bryce is half fae, half human, okay, and she doesn't have any powers, and she absolutely hates being half fae. She also has a very messy love life. She doesn't really want to commit to anybody, and she hooks up with a lot of random people, strangers. on top of that, she also has all these like predisposed ideas about males. And don't at me, because that is what Sarah calls men in her stories, in all of her stories, males. And these ideas are also instilled in her by her human mother, who's had a very bad experience with Bryce's biological father, who is Faye. Okay, so that is Bryce in a nutshell. We're gonna obviously dive deeper into her story when we start discussing the plot and the story. Okay, so next up we have Danica Findir. Danica is Bryce's best friend, and they met when they were in college, and they became thick as thieves, as they say. And eventually they became like sisters. Now Danica is one badass chick. She is biker girl boss kind of personality, and she's actually girl boss because she is the alpha of her pack. So yeah, that's right, Danica is a werewolf slash bloodhound, but you're not supposed to know that part till later. Anyway, so yeah, but she's not just the alpha of her pack. To add on top of that, she is also set to become the alpha prime of all werewolf packs, which would make her the alpha of all packs. So yeah, Danica is a pretty badass lady. We love Danica. But however, Danica is also like a trove of secrets. And those secrets are what's gonna, end up kind of thrusting us into the story, right? And kicking off the story, and also end up getting her in a lot of trouble. Okay, cool. Who do we have next? So next up we have Mr. Hunt Athalar. Hunt Athalar, his legal name is actually Orion Hunt Athalar, but he doesn't allow anybody to call him by Orion because that was the name specifically used by his mom. Hunt is a motherfucking angel, and not just any type of angel. He is a fallen angel. Oh yeah, so he's a bad boy. Yeah. Oh god, I lost my train of thought here. But Hunt is actually is like a personal assassin slash assistant to the governors who govern the governed. But yeah, and hence his title, the Umbra Mortis, which literally means the shadow of death. He is known as an angel of death, but he is an angel nonetheless. Hunt wears a lot of hats, both figuratively and literally. He is an assassin slash assistant slash detective, slash merc. I don't know. He's a bad boy. But Hunt, his background story is kind of interesting because he tried to lead a rebellion against the ruling body of this world, who are called the Asteri, and we will discuss them later, with his former lover and archangel Shahar. But he failed, and because he failed, he's become a slave. So yeah, there are slaves in the story. Ugh. So he's become a slave. And because he's become a slave, he got a tattoo that got etched on his forehead right above his eyebrows that looks like Jesus' crown of thorns, basically. And that tattoo is magical because it diminishes his power a lot, and even though his power is diminished, he is still one powerful motherfucker. So next up, we have, and you better sit down for this because here comes everybody's favorite character, including mine. We have Rune motherfucking Dannon.
Rune Dannon,
the crown prince of the Barbarian Fae. Go ahead. Do you hear the sound now? Do you hear it? Yeah? He is one sexy motherfucker. Guys, he's really, really sexy. He is tatted up. He is funny. He is pierced. Eyes, lips, everything in between. He is just motherfucking delicious, okay? So Rune is, here we go with the spoilers, okay? Rune is introduced to us as Bryce's distant cousin. However, as the story goes on and moves forward, we slowly start to realize that Rune is actually Bryce's half-brother. which makes Bryce the daughter of the Autumn King of the Fae himself. So he's her half brother. Okay, Rune is Bryce's half brother. Now, we start the story with Bryce and Rune having a pretty volatile relationship. Okay, apparently they used to be close when they were younger, but he said some pretty nasty things to her when she was 13. So Bryce started hating him and pushing him away out of her life. But Rune is actually a really good boy, and he will fight tooth and nail to get back into Bryce's good graces. Okay, Rune is actually he's also called the Starborn. Okay, which is a direct descendant of really powerful Fae ancestors. Okay, so yeah, Rune is one of he's just chef's kiss. You know, he's one of everybody's favorite characters, and if you read the book, you'll know why. Because he's just funny, witty, everything. He's everything a girl wants in a boy. So yeah. Let's move on again before I start drooling. So next up, we have Archangel Micah Domitus. Micah is the governor of Lunathian, which is where all of our main characters live. Okay, Micah also owns Hunt. Remember what I said earlier? Right. So Micah owns Hunt because when Hunt tried his failed coup centuries ago, Micah acquired Hunt from another archangel who ended up owning Hunt. Because she had a lot of financial issues because she had a problem with gambling. Okay, we'll get to that later. But because Micah owns Hunt, Hunt owes Micah a lot of debt. He made a deal with him. Okay, he made a deal that if Hunt atones for all the deaths that he's caused during the rebellion, Micah will set Hunt free. Okay, so Hunt owes Micah 2,217 deaths. That's the number we start with in the story. Now, Micah is a bit of a shady character. You can't, in the beginning of the story, you don't really know how to place him. You can't put a finger on his moral code, really. Is he nice? He's supposed to be nice and just because he's an angel, he's a governor, right? But he also comes off as vindictive and cold. And he owns slaves, so how nice can he really get? And he has a tendency to like to crucify people who he suspects of, dissent or any sort of anything bad. He likes to crucify them alive. So, again, how good could he really be? So that's really up to you to decide while you're reading the book. But like I said earlier, he comes off as vindictive and cold, and he's not really the nicest angel. But he is the governor, and he's powerful. Really, really powerful. One thing about archangels in the story, they're supposed to be so powerful that it's almost impossible to kill them. So keep that in mind whenever I talk about Micah or any of the other archangels. Okay? Cool. Let's move on. So next we have Archangel Sandriel. Now, she is not the nicest archangel either. She's not also one of the main characters per se, but she is important enough. Sandriel and Hunt don't have a great relationship because Sandriel actually used to be Shahar's twin sister who went up against Hunt and Shahar in the rebellion that they, tried to lead centuries ago. And she ended up slaughtering her own sister. So yeah, like I said, she's not really nice, and her and Hunt do not, have the nicest relationship. She also used to own Hunt after the rebellion, and like I said earlier, she had to sell him off to Micah because of her gambling problems, and so she can pay off her gambling debts. She's also, a sicko archangel. She used to torture Hunt a lot when she owned him, and she has her inner circle, who are called the Triari. They are one of the most vicious policing groups of the continent that they live in, and everybody fears them. And their allegiance goes to the Asteri alone, solely to the Asteri. So they are pretty powerful and they are pretty corrupt. Okay. She also governs the northwestern quadrant of Pangaea, which is one of the continents of this world. Okay, so that's Sandrio. She's pretty important, but she's not one of the main characters, so keep that in mind. Okay, so this brings us to the Asteri themselves. The Asteri, they are like the governing body of this whole world, and they are described as pure raw energy, similar to energy of stars. So they are pretty freaking powerful, and supposedly nobody can kill them. Okay, now there used to be 7 of them, but one of them got killed by a prince of demons, and it's a story that we will not get into, but one of them got killed by prince of demons, and now the remaining 6, they rule with an iron fist, to the point that they will brimstone bomb any area that they suspect hosts any sort of rebellion or dissent. And brimstone bombs in that world is kind of like nuclear weapons, nuclear bombs, right? So if you think Micah is bad, the Asteri, they are like 10 times worse. Okay, so let's move on. So next up, we have a group of characters who are not really the main group of characters, but they are very important to the story as well, right? So I'm going to be reading a little bit here because there are a lot of them. So first we have Queen Hypaxia, the queen of the witches, and she's good. We like her. We like Hypaxia, and she's going to become a bigger character in book 2, but she will play a small role in this book as well. Second, we have the Hind, or Lydia. I think I'm saying that right, the Hind, right? Or Lydia. And she is Hypaxia's half-sister, and she is a shifter, okay? Now, she's a pretty interesting character because she is supposed to be this brutal rebel hunter, and she is part of Sandriel's Triari, okay? So she is pretty brutal, okay? Keep an eye on her. Again, her character will become a lot more important in the second book, but she is introduced in this book as well. Third, we have Ethan, who is a werewolf, who is part of Danica's group of werewolves, but he was close to Bryce, and he secretly has some feelings for her, which, again, you're not supposed to know that yet, but you will. But after some things go down, he doesn't become close to Bryce anymore, okay? Now we have Fury. Fury is one of Bryce's friends as well. You remember Fury, Danica, and Juniper? So Fury, she is a pretty badass assassin. We just don't know what her power is, but everybody kind of fears her and is afraid of her, which sounds like another character from another book, but they don't know what her power is, okay? So keep an eye on Fury. She, again, becomes important. The next person is Juniper. Juniper is, again, part of the friend group for Bryce, Danica, and oh my God, and Fury. She is a ballerina, and she is a shifter as well, okay? Then we have Declan. Declan is one of Rune's best friends. He is a very powerful hacker, and he's Fae, okay? Then we have Flynn. Flynn is Rune's other best friend, and he's a very powerful, rich Fae Lord, but he's very witty and he's very flirty, and we love Flynn. Okay, then we have Lihiba. Now, Lihiba is a fire sprite who is owned by Jessica, the witch that Bryce works for in the antiquity store, and she owns Lihiba, and Lihiba lives in the antiquity store and works there. Okay, and Lihiba is one of those characters that you instantly fall in love with, and she's addicted to reality TV shows, and she's really, really cute. Okay, then we have, lastly, we have Therian. Therian is a merman, and he's the captain of intelligence for the River Queen of Lunathian. He becomes close to Bryce and Hunt, and he helps the two of them in what we will discuss later. Okay, so, whew, okay, let's move on from characters. These are all the characters that you need to know about for this book. Like I said, this book is huge, so it has a lot more characters, but you know what? These are the characters that you just need to know about. Okay, cool, let's move on. Whew, okay, so let's set up some, after the characters, let's set up some rules and some important information that you need to know about this world, okay? So first up, we have this whole place, this whole story takes takes place in a planet called Midgard. And that planet is very, very Earth-like. And within that planet, there are two continents. One is called Pangaea and one is called Valbara. Now, Lunathian is where all our main characters live. That is part of the Valbaran region. Pangaea is the other continent, which, if you recall, Sandriel governs the northwestern quadrant of it. Okay? Cool. Next up, we have any magical being in the story is called a Vanir. Okay? Now, if you're a witch, if you're fae, if you're merman, mermaid, werewolf, even any sort of magical animal, angel, anything like that, you're Vanir. Okay? And so Bryce, Hunt, Rune, Danica, all these characters we discussed, they are Vanir. Okay? Please excuse me, I'm reading a bit, I know, but because there's a lot of information that I need to set up here. Okay? So I just want to make sure I don't miss it. Cool. There are also humans in the world, but the humans, they're kind of considered low class, kind of low grade, low class kind of thing. And they are not treated very well by the Vanir. And the Asteri, they kind of encourage that kind of attitude, which causes the humans to start rebelling. Okay. And it also, the Asteri, we don't really get to find out why they treat the humans like that until book 2. So we're not going to get into, that reason. So all the Vanir, they're also immortal and they could live for centuries. Okay. But to do so, they have to go through something called the drop. The drop is something that is like very similar to you shedding your mortal outer skin kind of shell. And to perform the drop, it is kind of like you descend into the depths of death, right? And it's a very dangerous process, okay? And to kind of make your way back into life, you have to have something called an anchor. And that anchor is somebody who is usually close to you, okay? And somebody who you really, really trust. That anchor works kind of as like your thread back to life, who kind of pulls you back into life. When you make your ascension back into life, if you're supposed to have any Vanir powers, that is when you gain it. Okay, so the drop is what makes people immortal and what makes them very powerful and magical. Okay, next up we have something called Luna's Horn, which is a broken Fae relic that used to belong to the very first Fae. Okay, so it's very old. Okay, and it's broken, but it is also named after the goddess Luna, right? Okay, so that horn is able to open rifts between worlds. So that horn is very, very important. And again, like Danica's secrets, this horn will kind of kick the story for us. Okay. Lastly, within Lunathian, there are 7 gates. And this is kind of important because I don't want to mess it up. So I'm going to read a bit here. Lastly, within Lunathian, there are 7 gates in the city. Each of those gates are set along a ley line running through Lunathian. Okay, they had been designed as a quick way for guards to communicate with each other. All they had to do was kind of place their hands on against a golden disc pad kind of thing, and they spoke. And once they did that, there's a little gem that lit up to tell people who is speaking from what area they're speaking. These gates were very important back in the day, but now they've become like tourist attractions because, now that they have technology like cell phones, for example, they don't need them anymore. Keep in mind these gates, whenever somebody touches them, it kind of absorbs a very small amount, like a kernel of their power, okay? Because it's a magical gate, okay? So keep that in mind. But these gates are very important. Keep them in mind. We will get to them later, okay? And then, lastly, if you didn't figure it out, Lunathian is also called the Crescent City, the name of the book, which is because it is shaped like a crescent. I can't do a crescent shape, but it's shaped like a crescent. And the 7 gates, they're placed all over like those ley lines within Lunathian. Okay? Cool? All right, let's move on. We got through the hard stuff. Now we get through the fun stuff, the plot. Let's move on to the plot. Let's do it. So the plot. I want you to grab a hot, nice cup of tea so we could begin this because this is gonna be long. Now, the book is divided into 4 parts, okay? First part is called The Hollow. This part, it describes the beginning of the story. Bryce has the perfect life. She enjoys every sort of pleasure Lunathian has to offer. She works in the morning at the antiquity store, but then parties at night with her friends. So, she literally, it talks about like Bryce's perfect life. But sadly, this all comes crashing in on her when Danica gets suddenly murdered. So, and not in a fun way either, kind of murdered, like literally getting slaughtered, begging for your life, kind of murdered. And this all happens within the first 80 pages of the book. So we jump into this kind of event pretty fast, right? The night that Danica gets murdered, Bryce was partying in a club with Fury and Juniper. She was getting high all night, she was getting drunk all night, and she was having sex with random people in the bathroom. By the time she goes home, she finds the bloody mess that the killer left for her, right? And she finds Danica slaughtered along with all of her pack, okay? Now, she starts hearing noise coming out of the trash chute outside in the apartment complex, so she runs to see what it is, and she sees a demon running away. So she puts 2 and 2 together, and she figures that's probably the demon that killed Danica and all of her pack, okay? So she runs after him, but she loses him in the crowd for a second. When she finds him again, she finds him in an alleyway, and he's feeding on an angel. Now, because Bryce is super high and she is shocked, she doesn't realize at the time that this angel that the demon's feeding on is actually Archangel Micah. And so it must have been a pretty powerful demon to bring down the all-powerful Micah, okay? So, so she finds the strength somehow to kind of fight this demon off. But then the demon runs away, but not before like giving her like a nice juicy gash on her thigh. And that's when she calls for help, okay? And guess who comes to help her? Hunt Athalar. Now, Hunt kind of takes her in for question. He helps Micah, he takes her in for questioning. And, because Bryce is coming down from a high and she's very shocked, she doesn't say a word. She's not uttering one word. So she's pretty useless to Micah and his partner Isaiah, okay? So, but before they let her go, they unfortunately play an audio obtained by the security cameras in the apartment complex that they used to live in, because Danica and Bryce used to live together. I forgot to mention that. Danica and Bryce used to live together, and before they let her go, they obtain an audio that was recorded by the security cameras in the apartment complex. And in that audio, they hear Danica screaming and begging for her life. Okay, which kind of makes Bryce kind of lose control, and she kind of hulks out on a table, which Hunt thinks is pretty impressive for a reason. But yeah, they kind of decide this girl's useless. She doesn't know anything, and she's pretty fucking high, so we gotta let her go. Okay, so that is part 1 of the book. Like I said, it goes by fast, but it sets up the relationship between Danica and Bryce, and it goes extensively into that. Okay, cool? Okay, so part 2. And then again, please excuse me if I look up and down while I'm talking. It's a pretty complicated story, so I just want to make sure I don't miss anything, so I'm looking at my notes, okay? So part 2 is called The Trench, and this takes place 2 years later. It's 22 months after Danica's death, so 2 years later after Danica's death. Bryce is lonely. Fury has been avoiding Bryce to kind of, because she doesn't want to keep getting reminded of what happened and keep getting triggered. Okay, Juniper is the only person that kind of checks in on Bryce from time to time, and to the point that we find out that Bryce almost tried to kill herself one time, and Juniper was the one who stopped her. Okay, but Bryce's life starts to kind of fall apart, and she becomes a very sad and lonely person. She stops drinking and dancing. She used to love to dance, but she stopped dancing after Danica's murder. And she stopped drinking as well, but she doesn't tell everybody, she doesn't tell anybody that she stopped drinking. So people still have this idea of her that she's this party girl, okay? But like I said earlier, after Danica's death, she becomes a very sad, lonely person and her life becomes empty. She starts focusing on work more and running, okay? But other than that, that's all that is there in her life. What else? Suddenly, Bryce one time gets a visit from Hunt, Isaiah, and Micah during her work, to her job place. And Micah kind of starts kind of commissioning her to help Hunt and Isaiah, but mainly Hunt, investigate Danica's murder. Why after 2 years, you ask? Because somebody just got murdered the same exact way Danica got murdered. So Micah thinks since Bryce knew Danica the most, or so everyone thought, she would be a very helpful asset in this investigation. So he told her, partner up with Hunt, and I want you to help him figure this whole thing out, right? He also makes a deal with Hunt. Now, there's a summit that is coming up in 2 weeks or so. This summit, all the Veneer kings and queens, the Istiri, the governors, they're gonna meet so they could discuss the human rebellion that has been on the rise lately, okay? So Micah wants to look good in front of these people, and he doesn't want his city look like, be in chaos when they come visit. So he wants to look good in front of them. So he tells Hunt, if you figure out this whole case, and if you solve it with Bryce within those 2 weeks before the summit, I will make a deal with you. I will make your blood debt go all the way down to just 10 kills. Instead of the 2,217 that you owe me, I'll just make it 10 kills. So it's a pretty big deal for Hunt. But Hunt doesn't want to work with Bryce, but you know what? So he reluctantly takes on the job because it's, that's a pretty big deal for Hunt. So they start working together. And remember, Danica was a trove of secrets, okay? So Hunt and Bryce specifically, she's gonna start figuring out that Bryce didn't really know Danica as much as she thought she did. Danica really had those big, huge secrets that got her in trouble, and Bryce is gonna start figuring that out during the investigation. Now, during the investigation, Rune starts also, he joins the team. They team up with Rune as well, Bryce's half brother, but they think he's her cousin, to join the investigation and help them out. Why, you ask? Well, because during the investigation, they find out that Luna's horn, 2 weeks before Danica's murder, got stolen, okay? And because Rune is the crown prince of the Valbaran Fae, and this is a Fae relic, he felt responsible to kind of look for Luna's horn as well. So yeah, at this point, you could tell where this whole story is going, right? Micah gets Bryce and Hunt to work together, and they don't want to work together because she thinks he's just this alpha hole, right, who wants to control women, and he thinks she's this irresponsible party girl who has nothing to offer. She doesn't even have powers, so she has nothing to offer. But so you see where this is going? You see what we're setting up here, right? Reluctant, enemies to lovers kind of thing. So yeah, they have this little group with Rune, and they are investigating this whole thing. We also start discovering that Luna's horn, like I said earlier, it was stolen 2 weeks before Danica's murder. But Danica was supposed to be part of the auxiliary group, policing group, that was supposed to be guarding the whole area in the temple where Luna's horn was at, and she was supposed to be guarding this whole area. So, but not only that, they start discovering that Danica might have been sympathetic to the human rebellion, right? She also might have been addicted or using or dealing a drug called synth. Now, synth is a drug new on the market, okay? It is a very powerful drug. This drug has the ability to heal artifacts, but if a Veneer takes this drug, it makes them high. It's kind of like heroin. It makes them high, but it also amplifies their power, okay? The thing is, it's a very dangerous drug because if you take a high dose of it, it can make you lose your mind, turn on yourself, and kill yourself. Literally, like, rip your own face off. It's a very graphic part of the book that gets described. If humans take the synth, they become so powerful that they can actually fight off the veneer. Okay? But again, it is equally as dangerous to the humans as it is to the veneer. So again, if the humans take it at a high dose, it can make them turn on themselves and make them kill themselves. So they find out that Danica might have possibly been either using synth or dealing it. And so this all connects to the Luna's horn in a funny way, where they think somebody's trying to get their hands on the synth so they could heal Luna's horn, right? And use the horn and open up rifts between worlds. Okay? So they start thinking, well, maybe this is why Danica got killed, because she either had a hand in this, or she set this whole thing up, or she wanted to use it, or she knew of somebody who was trying to do this and they killed her. That's what they were trying to figure out throughout the whole investigation. Okay, so that is part 2. It's a very complicated part, but yeah. So let's get to part 3. So this takes us to the third part of the book, which is called The Canyon. In this part of the book, Bryce and Hunt get to know each other. It's the fun and games of the book, okay? They get to know each other. They start flirting heavily with each other, and they start having feelings for each other, okay? To the point that they almost once have sex with each other, but because Hunt was hurt, the only thing he could do was go down on her before his wounds started opening up again. Sad face, I know, right? So yeah, as I said, they start really having feelings for each other and getting close to each other. But then the story starts taking a weird turn. Bryce finds out that Hunt is actually working against her, and he's trying to stall the investigation. And then she finds out that he was actually trying to buy the synth because he wants to use it for another rebellion that he wants to lead up. So Hunt wants to create this rebellion again, but he kind of starts realizing, well, I don't want to do this because of my feelings for Bryce. But at this point, it was too late to change his mind, and he had to go through with it. But unfortunately, Hunt gets caught by Micah, and he gets thrown in a jail cell. And Bryce is heartbroken. And to kind of punish Hunt, Micah but he gives him back to Sandriel, which is, if you recall, one of the worst things that can happen to Hunt, because she used to torture him and she really hates him. So Bryce is heartbroken. She says, I never want to see him again. I don't want to have anything to do with Hunt again. And she just kind of stays away. And this is where things fall apart in the investigation, and she starts going back into her older self. So this is where things get complicated. So let's take a deep breath, okay? And start. Are you settled in? Did I lose you? We're almost done. I swear to God. Okay, let's start. Okay. So, complicated part. Let's go. So, when Hunt was in the jail cell, okay, after he got caught, Sandriel comes to visit him, and she lets him know that she has taken him back. Micah has given Hunt back to her. And to kind of taunt him, she puts on loop, all these pictures of Bryce to kind of make him feel super guilty. And she leaves. So he's sitting there watching on loop pictures of Bryce. And this is when he realizes that he's in love with Bryce, and he would do anything to see her one more time and beg for forgiveness, okay? Bryce, at that point, she starts kind of shutting down again, like I said. She goes back to her older self. She starts drinking again. She's very I've had enough with, men and all of that. So, but Ruin, being the good brother that he is, he tries to help her out. And that's when he lets her know, Sandriel took back Hunt as punishment. So, that kind of shocks her back into life, kind of thing, because she thinks to herself, I don't want to lose another friend, even though I hate him for what he's done, I don't want to lose another friend. I can't go through that again. So she runs over to Sandriel to beg for Hunt's life. But Sandriel is kind of I know who you are. I know who you are, Bryce Quinlan. I know that you are Rune's half-sister, and you are the Autumn King's daughter, which makes you the crown princess of the Volbaran Fae. And so Bryce was like, well, if you know who I am, then I give up my life instead of Hunt. Just let him go. Rune goes crazy, and he's like, absolutely not. You cannot give up your life. You know, you're a princess. You cannot go into slavery. That's not how it works. Thankfully, Sandriel agrees, and she doesn't listen to Bryce. So that's clusterfuck number one. After that, all the governing body, which includes Rune, Jessica, Fury, Hypaxia, all of these people, they drive to meet for the summit, and which is in a place 30 minutes outside of Lunathian, okay? And Bryce goes back to the antiquity store trying to research how she can get Hunt out of this whole mess, okay? Which takes us into part 4. So again, settle in, because this is where shit hits the fan, literally, and things go crazy, okay? Get ready for part 4. So part 4. Part 4 is called The Ravine, okay? So let's get into part 4. This is, like I said, where shit hits the fan and, you know, things get super fucking complicated. Okay. So part 4 starts with the summit. During the summit, Micah inexplicably leaves without giving a legit reason why he's leaving. And all of a sudden, the doors, remember Bryce is at the antiquity store trying to research a way to find, you know, a way to kind of get Hunt out of the mess that he's in now. But all of a sudden, the magical, warded, protected doors of the antiquity store open, and in walks Micah. Okay? So something in Bryce kind of tells her like, oh, no, this is not good. Why is he here? He's supposed to be at the summit. So if he's here, something bad is about to happen. So something in instinct-wise tells her, I should text Jessica, who's at the summit, and tell her Micah's here. Why is he here? So she, the sneaky girl, she kind of under the desk, kind of like this, she texts Jessica and tells her, well, why is Micah here? You know, Jessica interrupts the summit, and she tells everybody that Micah is at the antiquity store. Now, Rune has his inner circle with him, which includes Declan, right? Remember Declan, our hacker friend, okay? He hacks into the cameras and microphones of the store, the security cameras of the store, and kind of puts on a live feed for everybody, okay? And Micah, being the super villain, assholey villain that he is, of course, because that's what villains do, he starts explaining to Bryce what exactly he's doing there and what he's going to do to her. So Micah starts explaining to Bryce that he figured out who has the horn, okay? And Bryce is confused for a second, but he tells her, you know very well that you figured it out. You figured it out when Hunt betrayed you. And so she agrees with him. She has the horn. She essentially became the horn. So how did she become the horn? Let's talk about that. So Danica stole the horn herself, okay? And because she found out what Micah wants to do with it. Basically, Micah wants to use the power of the horn so he can get initiated and become one of the Asteri himself, okay? She found out that that's what he wants to do, okay? So he's a fucking crazy idiot, okay, according to Danica. So she stole the horn herself. She disintegrated the horn into powder and then used that powder and put it into witch ink, okay? And one time when Bryce was super fucking drunk, she gave Bryce a tattoo on her back, okay? So Bryce can't say no, okay? So Bryce essentially became Luna's horn, okay? So the asshole that he is, okay, he told her what he did to Danica. Turns out Micah is essentially the person that killed Danica, okay? Because every villain likes to be like, you know, I'm gonna tell you exactly what I'm gonna do and what my plan is and what I did. And everybody at the summit is watching this, okay? So basically they find out that Micah found out that Danica found out about this whole thing. And so he took a bunch of synth and he went into her apartment that night that Bryce was getting super hammered in the club in, right? And he forcefully injected Danica with a large amount of synth, which then ended up making Danica lose her mind. She turned on her own pack, she teared them apart, and then she turned on her own self and killed herself. Okay, and he's standing there watching the whole thing. Okay, so that's who she was begging in the audio recording to please to spare her life. Okay, so at this point, Micah, after he tells Bryce all of this, he starts taunting her. And while he's taunting her, he accidentally touches her back. Okay? I forgot to mention, he also forcefully, as well, gives her a high dose of synth. Gives Bryce a high dose of synth. Which means this synth just healed what? It healed the originally broken horn on her back. Okay, so the synth just healed the horn. He accidentally, while he's taunting her, touches the back, her back. Okay, and then he goes after her. Yeah. So remember Lihabah, the fire sprite that works in the antiquity store with Bryce? She realizes, well, I have to give Bryce a fighting chance. So I have to distract Micah for a second or two. She tries to distract Micah, and in the process, she loses her life. So sadly, we lose Lihabah. Okay, but in the process, Bryce finds the time to run away. Okay, and unearth a sword that Danica used to store to hide in the store that she works in, and it's a very powerful sword. So she fights off Micah, okay? After Lihabah gives up her life, she fights off Micah, and because of the synth, she's able to fight him off, right? And she eventually kills him. And again, remember, everybody's watching this at the summit, okay? So she kills him, and then for good measure, she sets his body on fire, just to make sure that he's dead. At that point, she's also wondering if she's going to turn on herself and kind of kill herself, but it doesn't happen. So at this point, Hunt, Rune, everybody at the summit, they're like, send her help. Meanwhile, all of this is happening. They're like, send help. And the Asteria and Sandriel say no. And the Asteria at some point, they just like, peace out. Like, shit is hitting the fan. We do not want to be here while this is happening. Okay? So when Micah dies, Hunt again, is like, why aren't you sending help? He asks Sandriel, why aren't you sending help? She's like, no, I'm not sending help. Because she's an asshole, right? So Ethan realizes everything that just happened, that Bryce had nothing to do with Danica's death, right? So he's like, I'm going to send you help. So he sends Bryce help. And when help arrives, they knock on the door and she's like, I'm fine. And she's expecting them to come in and drag her to jail. But they don't. And everything gets super quiet, which is super weird. So she opens the door and she finds out why they don't come in. It's because Micah, while he's taunting her and touching her back, he accidentally opened the 7 portals of hell. And all these hell demons are attacking the city and attacking everyone. Okay? So at this point, again, at the summit, everybody's begging Sandriel to send help, but she's like, no, I'm not sending help. Hypaxia, the queen of witches, she has had enough of Sandriel's shit. So at this point, she kind of takes Hunt, and because she's a witch, she's able to do this, and she removes the magical tattoo off of his forehead. When she does that, it gives back Hunt 100% of his power. And Hunt, hating Sandriel and just, again, as well, he has had enough of Sandriel's shit. He actually fucking kills her. He hulks out on her and kills her. So Bryce kills Micah and Hunt kills Sandriel. At this point, Fury, she's like, I have a helicopter that will take us to Lanathian in 30 minutes or so. And Rune, Therian, Hunt get into the helicopter with her and try to go save Bryce. While they're on their way, Declan sends them a message telling them, hey, I just found out that those Asteri bastards, they're sending their guards with brimstone missiles to the city. So instead of dealing with the demons, they're trying to bomb the whole city. And Bryce, mind you, she's the only one in the city who's actually trying to fight these demons off, right? Because she's still in synth, remember? So she's trying to fight these demons off and help everybody hunker down and get into shelter. Okay, so if the Asteri send those brimstone, nuke kind of bombs, missiles to the city, Bryce will die. So for some reason, the helicopter couldn't land in the city. So Hunt was like, well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to do this hero landing on Bryce, right? And protect her from the missile that is coming right for her. Okay, so that's exactly what he does. And he lands on Bryce and he takes the hit of the missile. So because he's done that, okay, he gets the brunt of the hit and he's dying. Okay, now I want you to remember, or I realize I haven't said this, but Bryce is still mortal because she still hasn't done the drop. Okay, she had this plan with Danica to do the drop, her and Danica together to do the drop and be each other's anchors, but because Danica died, she kind of like put it off and never did it. Okay, so when Bryce realizes Hunt is dying, she realizes that, well, I'm also the horn, so just like Micah used me to open these portals, I can also close these portals, but I'm gonna need power. So to get power, I'm gonna have to do the drop right now, right there and then. But so she goes to the gates. Remember the gates, what do? They work as what? They work as kind of like intercoms all over the city, and ask somebody to come and anchor her, but nobody is there to help her because they're all sheltered and afraid of the demons. Okay, so she asks somebody to help her, nobody's there, so she realizes, I gotta do what I gotta do. I gotta do the drop. The thing is, if she does the drop while she's also touching Hunt, she will heal him. So she feels like, you know what, I'm gonna give up my life to try to close these gates. Okay, it's very dangerous to do this without an anchor. I'm gonna give up my life to try to close these gates and also heal Hunt. Okay, so Declan, the good little hacker that he is, he hacks into the security cameras of the city, and everybody at the summit is watching this live as well. Okay, so Bryce she uses the gates, because remember the gates have magical powers. So she puts her hand on the golden disc and she uses the gates and starts doing the drop. Are you still with me? We're almost done, I promise. When she does the drop, she descends into the depths of like death, right? And guess who's waiting for her? No other than Danica. Okay, none other than Danica. Danica's waiting right there for her. Danica uses the very last kernel that is left of her power in her and her soul to meet her while she's doing the drop. And when Bryce sees her, it was a very powerful, emotional scene. You know, she tells her, I can't do this anymore, Danica. Life has been hell without you, and I don't want to go up there. I'm giving up. I don't want to do this. And so Danica's like, absolutely not. That's not an option. You have to get back up there and you have to do this. Okay. And she's like, I don't want to. I'm so emotionally exhausted. I don't want to. So Danica tells her, what about your man? He's dying. If you don't do this, he's going to die. And she's like, I don't love him. I don't care. And she's like, don't be a fucking idiot, Bryce, and don't bullshit a bullshitter. I know that you have feelings for him and you have to get back there and save his life. You have to save everybody's life. Right? So Danica starts helping Bryce do the ascension. Okay. Now remember, these gates, for centuries, people have been using them as tourist attractions and kind of like as wishing wells. And every time anybody, okay, puts their hand on that sun disc, that golden disc, they give up a kernel of their magical powers. Okay. So Bryce is making the ascension back into life from the drop. And as she's making the ascension, she starts picking up all this power that has been left and taken by all these people for centuries, okay, that they have just kind of dropped into the gates. So Bryce is just picking up all this power, and people in the summit are seeing her power level go up to the point that she has become even more powerful than Rune and the Autumn King himself. Okay, and so while she's making the ascension, Hunt heals, and he wakes up and he sees her like completely like she looks dead. So he starts doing CPR on her, right? And it's again one of those very powerful scenes, and he confesses his love to her, and he tells her, don't be a fucking coward and leave me because you're afraid of your feelings that you have for me, right? And so Danica uses the very last energy she has to kind of like push Bryce back into life, and Bryce finally wakes up very powerful, okay, with a like a scar that looks like a star between her chest right here. Okay, so at this point, Bryce wakes up, and it's a very cute scene, and she looks at Hunt and she's like, did you just call me a coward? And then they kiss, and Bryce uses her powers to close down the gates, okay, and fight off the demons. And all of a sudden she realizes she has gained a lot of power, that she herself has become almost like Rune, like Starborn. And she has this power to blind, like it literally blinds demons and blinds people. It's like very powerful light that blinds people, okay? And so demons, they're either scared and they run into back to hell before she closes the gates, or she fights them off and blinds them and kills them. Okay, so Bryce single-handedly saved the day, okay? So all these people come out from shelter. Everybody at the summit sees all of this happening. So they see that Bryce and Hunt kind of worked as a team together and saw what happened. And Bryce kind of became a hero, okay? And they have this sweet moment of kissing in front of people. And you know, yeah. Do you think we're done? We're not done yet. There's a little part left. So after that, Isaiah kind of becomes the leader in command, you know, to kind of take control of Lunathian until the Asteri figures out what to do with Lunathian and who's the new governor after Micah. Okay, Bryce and Hunt, they get back together. Hunt even moves in with Bryce into her apartment, and they kind of lay low because they did something that is very dangerous. They each killed an archangel. Okay, so they know that the Asteri, they're not gonna leave them alone, you know. So one of the Asteri members, his name is Regulus, calls Bryce one day, and he essentially threatens her. He tells her, if you keep your mouth shut and don't tell people, because even though everything was televised to the summit, okay, people at the summit knew what happened, it wasn't nationally televised. People don't know what happened, okay? So Regulus tells her, if you tell people that you and Hunt killed archangels, we're gonna kill you, okay? If you keep your mouth shut, we're gonna leave you be. We're gonna leave you alone. And for good measure, to prove that we mean what we are saying, we are gonna free Hunt Athalar. He's no longer a slave, okay? So that is essentially where the story ends, okay? So it's kind of like happily ever after, but because there's a book 2, you know that it doesn't last long, you know, and that is where everything ends, okay? So it's a very powerful book, and it's a very look at this, look at how thick this book is, and it's a very powerful story, and it's a very, very moving story. But that is where our story ends for book 1 for our character Bryce Quinlan and Hunt Athalar. Okay, let's get moving to the reviews. So that was book 1 of the Crescent City book series. Okay, so obviously this is a huge book with a very complicated story, right? Like I said, this is an 800 page book, and look how thick this book is, right? So let's get to the reviews, because I have a lot to talk about and I have things to say, and yeah, let's get to that. First up, we'll start with the spice meter. I gotta say, this book in terms of spice, it was not that spicy. I mean, there's the slow burn kind of enemies to lovers kind of trope. You know, there's a heavily flirting, a lot of heavy flirting. And there's only like one scene that really counts as a sex scene, which is not fully sex. It was just like Hunt going down on Bryce, right? And there's another scene that is, I would say, emotional, like, but that is it. That is it. And because of that, I only give this book like 1.5 peppers. Yeah, that's it. I mean, that's it. Because like I said, it's just only one scene of him going down on Bryce, and then he had to stop before he got hurt. Sorry, girlies. So, yeah, in terms of spice meter, I only give this one 1.5 peppers. Okay? So, let's get to the review. Now, I keep repeating this because I want to make sure that you guys understand that this is a very huge book, okay? This is a very, look at this book. It's 800 pages long, okay? But let's get to the review because I want to get to the pros and cons. I think because the book is huge, the only fair way to do this is to do a list of pros and cons, okay? So, pros. Sarah J. Maas is a master at world building, okay? She sets up an amazing, well thought out world in terms of magic, in terms of characters, in terms of the rules of the world, all of that, okay? So this is a very, very well set up world, okay? That's number one. Number two, the characters all have their own distinct voices and they're very different from each other. We also have characters that are very lovable. Sadly, we see some of them go, like Lihaba and Danica. But they, there are a lot of very lovable, good characters in this book. Okay? But really, the standout of this whole series, and I feel like the standout of all her writing really are the characters. You really get to fall in love with them. Even the villains, like the really good villains. So the characters are very, very, good. Okay? Third, the relationship between Danica and Bryce. Now, I want to say this. Sarah was really, really great at setting up a really good platonic relationship. Okay? Now, it was also a good reminder to remind people that platonic friendship, relationships, they're just as important as romantic ones. And she makes sure, she actually goes the length and makes sure to say that the relationship between Bryce and Danica was nothing but friendship. Because there's a scene where Hunt actually asks Bryce, were you two lovers? Is that why you were so affected by her death? And she says, no, I think we were in love with each other in terms of love each other as friends, but we were never lovers. We were very, very close, or so she thought. So the relationship between Danica and Bryce is very important, and it's so great to see a writer set up not just a romantic relationship, but a friendship between two women that lasts long. And not only that, I have to say that there's a part in the book that talks about, when Danica helps her do the drop, right, and do the ascension. Danica basically vanishes into nothing after that because she gave up the very last part of her soul to do this, to help Bryce. So that is a very strong friendship. And to have two women characters who have this sort of friendship, right, is amazing. Instead of having two, the usual male gaze kind of trope of like two catty women going up against each other. Okay, so that is a very beautiful part of the book. Number 4 of the pros, as usual, Sarah sheds light on a lot of mental health issues, especially PTSD, gaslighting, trauma, and all of that. PTSD especially, with all of that Bryce goes through after Danica's death, it's a heavy part of this book, and even talks about, kind of suicide a little bit because of PTSD. So again, it's very important, and it's something that is close to my heart, which is, it's something that she also kind of tries to include in all of her books, I noticed. So she's a very mental health advocate for in all of her books, and I truly fucking love that, because trauma and PTSD and mental health in general is part of our world, and I truly believe the art needs to focus more on these issues. So I thank her for doing this. Number 5, the females in this book, they're badasses. They are fucking badass. You have Bryce, you have Danica, you have Fury, you have even Sandriel, who's not a good person. She's still a badass. You have Hypaxia. All of them are badass, especially Bryce. You know, Bryce kind of like saves the day almost all on her own. So the females in this book, chef's kiss. They are really, really, really good. And that is something that we truly love. Okay. Another thing, side note, Bryce is a fiery redhead who is voluptuous and curvy, and boy do we love a voluptuous curvy character, and boy do we want more of that. We want more characters like that, you know. Love to my all skinny girls, all of them, but we also want some, you know, representation for curvy voluptuous girls. Come on, like. And I love that Bryce is considered a character who's a main character who's like that. Okay. All right, so let's get to the not so fun part. So the not so fun part, the cons. Okay, so let me just preface this by saying that I am a huge Sarah J. Maas fan, okay? So before we start, this isn't me talking shit about her or her writing. And for the people that do like to talk shit about Sarah and her writing, let me just remind everyone, okay? Let me remind everyone that Sarah wrote her first novel, Throne of Glass, when she was just 16 or so, right? So what have you done when you were that age, huh? Other than, you know, be horny and emotional. So I want to preface by saying that art is subjective, and even though there are, in my opinion, there are flaws to this book, okay? This book was freaking amazing, okay? So this isn't me talking shit. This isn't me criticizing her as a person or as a writer, okay? But there are some things that didn't work for me and some things that obviously worked for me, because if I didn't like this book, I wouldn't be spending the time of day on it, okay? All right? Don't kill me. All right, so let's start. First thing, this book, as I keep saying, is long. It's very, very, very long and repetitive. Look how thick this book is, okay? So I think because this book gets a little bit repetitive, it contributed to the size of this book. And the repetition, it comes from like character descriptions, it comes from like repetition of events that she tries to set up, but then don't end up like playing well into like the overall arc, the overall story of the whole book. So I think this is one of the things that kind of got to me, is how long the book is. And I think, in my opinion, this book is about 200 pages longer than it needed to be. So 200 pages, that's a whole book on its own. You know what I mean? So yeah, this book is long. So be forewarned, you know, like it's not an easy read. It's not a book that you'll knock out in one or 2 days, okay? All right, so the second thing, it was difficult for me to get into this book from the beginning because I just did not feel like I cared about the main character that much. In the beginning, she kind of keeps going on and on about the party girl that Bryce is, how perfect her life is. And I kind of was like, I get it. She is, you know, a 23-year-old who has a nice party life. You know, I get it. Move on, right? And even though like we get to the murder by page 80, like it's still, I was like, okay, so like, you know what I mean? When you compare Bryce in the beginning of the book to other characters in her other book series, for example, Farah in Akatar, you know, Farah by no means she's full of flaws, right? But at the same time, at least you understood why Farah did things the way that she did. It's because to save her family, right? In this book, however, Bryce, for example, I was just like, you're a horrible human being. You're so immature and childish. And I didn't get to see the redeeming side of Bryce until much later on in the book. So that's why like it was hard for me to get into the story from the beginning, because I was kind of like, I don't care about this character. I really don't, you know, and maybe it's my age, you know, I am old, but that's just where I was in the beginning. And I kept finding myself pushing myself to get through the story, which I'm glad I did, because I really did enjoy this book, like I said. Then number 3, there wasn't enough magic, I feel like, in the book. Magic was kind of like in the periphery, and it was kind of like in this, it was like a character on its own that was talked about and kind of like spoken about, but like it never really made an entrance all the way until the end. And I just felt like there wasn't enough magical elements in the story for a fantasy book, which is kind of huge. So I would have liked more. I would have liked more magic, more fae, more werewolf, more, you know, I don't know, animosity between like magical creatures. So instead of the 200 pages that was repetitive of like just describing characters over and over of how they looked, how they smell, how they like act, you know, I would have loved to see more magic included in those 200 pages. And I think it would have made the book a lot faster and more enjoyable for me. Okay, so that's it in terms of cons. So there were only 3 cons, and there are like 5 or so like pros. So in general, the pros win. Okay, so again, this is a really good book. I definitely recommend reading it. It's a really good book. It's very well written. It's an amazing story, and yeah, I definitely officially give this book 4 out of 5 stars. And the only reason why it's not 5 stars is because of how huge the book is, like I mentioned earlier. And like I said, it became a bit repetitive for me. But other than that, please read this book. It's a great book. And I'm not gonna give too much, but the second book is even more amazing. And like I said earlier, the rumors are true, girls and boys. You know, ladies and gentlemen, she is actually going to tie all of her books together at some point. And I think it becomes very obvious in book 2 at the end. So that is all I'm gonna say. That is all I'm gonna say, because we're gonna discuss all of this more in book 2's book review. So to wrap things up, thank you so much for coming to my book review for Crescent City Book 1, written by Sarah J. Maas. I love doing this, and please be kind, because I'm still a baby at doing this and I'm still learning at doing this. Please let me know if you have any thoughts or reviews of my review. I would love some, you know, feedback. Love it from you guys. And please let me know what you think about the book, because I actually want to hear what you guys think about this. I want to discuss it with all of you, everyone who read this book, believe it or not. But official review, this book is 4 out of 5, okay? And the only reason why I didn't give it 5 out of 5 is because, like I said earlier, and I mentioned a couple times, this book is huge and it became a little bit repetitive. So that's the only reason why I gave it 4 out of 5. Spice meter, I only gave it 1.5 peppers, because there's only like 1 sex scene, and it's not even full sex. It's just, you know, yeah. I'm not gonna get into that again. Okay, don't get me started again. But yeah, so definitely recommend this book. Please go out and read it. It's an amazing book. Definitely recommend it. Definitely officially give it, you know, 2 thumbs up. Okay? Lastly, I want to thank you guys for joining me at this book review, but I also want to say something. I used some amazing art from amazing artists during this book review, and I want you guys to give them some love, because artists, they deserve love and support, and not just, you know, emotional support, but also, if you can, show them some monetary support, because artists, guys, they cannot just live on exposure. They need your help to survive, for food, for bills. So please, if you can support any of the artists mentioned below, please visit their pages and try to support them monetarily, with money, with financing. Yeah? Okay, cool. Thank you so much again for joining me. I am out. Thank you for letting me spill the tea, as they say, and have a great night. Bye.